Hello everyone, and welcome to part 2 of my tutorial on using Git and GitHub with MATLAB. This tutorial is going to cover a few different topics. We're going to talk about adding MATLAB files to our repository that we created last time. We're going to talk about a few basic Git commands so that we understand how to use them. And we're also going to understand how to use MATLAB's GUI with Git. GUI stands for Graphical User Interface, and this is going to allow us to use these Git commands without having to manually type them into the command line. So first, let's go ahead and get started learning about some basic Git commands and some basic Git concepts. So with Git, there are two main copies of our code. There's the local copy and the remote copy. The local copy is what's stored on our own computers, and the remote copy is what's stored on GitHub servers. If we make changes to our local code and we want other people to be able to see them, we have to make sure that they appear on the remote copy of the code as well. So whenever we start a programming session, we always want to start by pulling the latest copy of the remote code. The pull command is what's used to update our own local copy of the code with whatever changes have been made to the remote copy. If we make changes to our local copy of the code and we want to update the remote copy, we have to first commit those changes, and then once we commit all of our changes, we have to push them. So committing, you can do multiple commits during a coding session, and that can be used to keep a history of the changes that you make to the code. You can include multiple commits in one push, but all the changes that you make to your local code must be committed before they are pushed to the remote code. Once you push the commits to your remote code, you'll be able to see all of the changes that you've made to your local copy. Okay, so let's look at how to add a new file to MATLAB. To add a new file in MATLAB, all we have to do is go to this new button, click the type of file we want, and now I said we want a script, so I'm going to go ahead and just type some basic code. Say a equals 5, b equals a times 2, whatever. Now I want to save this to the local copy of my repository, and I'm just going to save that normally. So let's name this testing.m. We should see that this file has been added to the current folder navigation on the side, but we can see that it's a white circle instead of a green circle. This means that we haven't added it to Git yet. So if we want to add it to Git, all we have to do is highlight the file, right-click on it, scroll down to Source Control, and click Add to Git. Now we can see that this white circle has turned into a black plus mark, which means that we're adding it to our Git. Now if we want these changes to be reflected on the remote server, remember we always have to commit our changes and then push them. So when we commit this change, we have the option to add a commit comment. So I'm going to say added testing.m. And adding a commit comment is a good way to give just a simple summary of what you changed. Now that we've committed that file, we can see that this has turned into a green circle. This means that we have no changes that we need to commit. Once we committed all of our changes, we can go back to Source Control by right-clicking on this current folder navigation, go to Source Control, and then we can push all of our changes. Now MATLAB requires you to put in your GitHub login info, so I'm going to go ahead and do this off camera. Okay, so all I did was put in my login info and press enter. So now if we go back to that repository, we should be able to see that that testing.m file has been added with the commit message added testing.m. If we click on this file, we'll be able to see all the code we wrote, and that is how we add files to GitHub. Another cool feature of MATLAB's GUI is that it allows us to commit multiple files or commit changes to multiple files at once. So I'm going to walk you through another example. Let's make another code, just CLC clear close all, and we're going to say for I is 1 to 5. Very simple. And I'm going to save this to the local copy of my repository and just name this looping.m. Now again, remember, we always need to first add this to our GitHub, or add this to Git, and that's just by going to source control and add to Git. And then let's make a change to testing that we can commit as well. So let's say C equals B plus 3. So if we save this file, we can see that this green circle has turned into a blue square. This means that we've made changes to the file that we need to commit. So let's go ahead and right-click source control and then view and commit changes. This allows us to commit changes to multiple files at once. So we can see that we've checked looping and testing. So let's make our commit message say new updates. Once we click commit, we're able to push those commits to our remote copy of the repository on GitHub using the same method we used last time. So it's just right-click, source control, push. And then I'm going to go ahead and enter my username and info again. Okay, now I just press OK. And then once this processes, I should be able to go to the website again where my GitHub repository is stored. If I refresh the page, I see it's added this looping.m file, and it's also added this testing.m file with the updated changes that we've made. So that's how you add and change files in GitHub, and that's how you use MATLAB's GUI to commit and push files. I also want to show you how to use MATLAB's GUI to pull files, how to pull changes from your remote code to your copy of the local repository. So what I've done, I've just added manually this to-do.txt file. And it just has some information, a little to-do list, write code, finish your project. If I go back to MATLAB though, and I refresh this, I can't see that to-do.txt anywhere. Why is that? Well, it's because I haven't pulled the latest copy of the code. And this is why it's important to pull the latest copy of your code whenever you start. Because if you try to push your changes without first having the latest copy of the code, it's going to get messed up. So to do that, I want to right-click, navigate to source control, and then click pull. And just like when we push, this is going to have us put in our username and password. So I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick. And once we press OK, it will update our folder navigation with this to-do.txt file. So we can open this, and it'll show us the changes that we've made in the remote repository. So now at this point, you should have a good understanding of what committing does, what pulling does, and what pushing code does. You should also understand how to use MATLAB's GUI to navigate these three commands, and that's just by right-clicking, going to source control, and from here you have everything you need. And just as a reminder of how important it is to always commit and push your code before you are done with your coding session. I found this funny thing online that says, in case of fire, git commit, git push, and then leave. Okay, thank you everyone for joining me for this part of our tutorial on using Git and GitHub with MATLAB. And I hope you'll join me next time when we talk about how to write a good README file for our GitHub repository.